So now I want to introduce the panelists. First and foremost, we have to start off with today, we pulled a bunch of people who we think are experts in all of these different areas to give you your best answers for the questions you sent us in advance. And I want to start with introducing Robin Simons. She's co-managing partner of Gordon and Reese in an employment labor law firm that stands behind the offering that we have for our clients through a company called Enquiron, or also known as Sapers Wallack Helpline, which we provide to all of our health and welfare clients. If you don't do health and welfare with us, but do other benefits, then I guess we'd encourage you to cross over if you like the brilliance that she shares today with you. Second, one of our panelists is Suzanne D'Amato. She's an ERISA attorney, part of our Hill Group of New England. And we have Scott Kaplowitz, who's may or may not be on. We're having some technical difficulties getting his picture on. But if not him, we've got some Emily Matthews, who's also from his firm, who can speak to the questions regarding some of the actual filing for whatever types of things that you're looking to get support, the details. And our final panelist is Scott Tuxbury, our own Vice President of Retirement and Wealth Management Services at Sapers Wallack. So with that, I will begin. We want to start with the first question. This is to Suzanne D'Amato, if you would. What is the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, or otherwise known as FFCRA?
Oh yeah, thank you. Start off with the new acronym. So the Families First Coronavirus Response Act is a piece of federal legislation that was signed into law just about a week ago. I think we've all kind of lost all concept of like space and time, but about a week ago, it became effective on April 1st. FFCRA applies to employers with fewer than 500 employees, and it is limited to the circumstances connected to the current pandemic. The FFCRA mandates that covered employers provide paid leave for employees who are affected by the coronavirus if those employees are unable to work or telework as a result. And the leave is being provided through two different entitlements: emergency paid sick leave and emergency FMLA leave. Emergency FMLA leave is available when an employee is unable to work or telework because they have to care for a child under the age of 18 whose school or care provider is unavailable because of COVID-19. In order to be eligible for that leave, an employee must have been employed for at least 30 days. And under the FMLA entitlement, a maximum of 12 weeks of leave is available. The first 10 days are unpaid. After that, an employer is required to provide leave at 2/3 the employee's regular rate of pay, up to $200 per day and $10,000 in total. So that's emergency FMLA leave in a nutshell. Emergency paid sick leave requires 2 weeks of paid leave. So that's 80 hours for your full-time employees, or the number of hours that a part-time employee works in 2 weeks. And this leave is effective right away on April 1st, regardless of how long an employee has been employed. Remember too that this paid sick leave has to be made available in addition to any paid sick leave that you might already provide on your own, or that you provide because you're required to under state or local law. There are 6 qualifying reasons for paid sick leave. I can read through them if anybody kind of wants a refresher, but the first 3 reasons are kind of because the employee themselves is subject to a quarantine or isolation order, or because they themselves are experiencing symptoms. And basically the second 3 reasons are because the employee needs leave to care for someone else. So for sick pay, reasons for leave for reasons 1, 2, and 3 are paid at the employee's regular rate of pay, up to $511 per day and $5,110 in the aggregate. For reasons 4, 5, and 6, so those are the reasons where the employee needs leave to care for someone else, those leaves are paid at 2/3 the regular rate of pay, up to $211 per day and $2,000 total. So I guess the last thing that I'll say about FFCRA now by way of introduction is just that it also creates tax credits in order to help eligible employers cover the cost of providing these paid leaves. How was that for?
Perfect. Robin, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I think that's a perfect summary, and it's not an easy act to summarize by any means. We've all been struggling because the guidance that's been issued by the Department of Labor has been, shall we say, volatile. So it has evolved over the course of the week, including over the weekend. The Department of Labor published a question and answer series that addressed many of the practical issues that would impact employers, including whether they could qualify for an exemption under it if they have fewer than 50 employees. However, on April 1st, Congress sent the Department of Labor a very strongly worded letter demanding that those guidelines be completely overhauled. That they didn't use the term overhaul, but they used Congress-like terms for such a thing. And in response, about a half an hour ago, the Department of Labor doubled down and issued a longer set of questions and answers, or added to the existing set. So it went from about 32 questions and answers to 58 questions and answers. The intermediate set, question 4 and question 58 and 59, had to do with that exemption, for example. The new set has 79 questions, and it came out as we were setting up. So none of us have had a chance to look at those, to comment on them. And all we can really do is recommend that at the end, that the resources that Aviva has made available on the follow-up, to closely monitor those, because that's what we're all going to do. That's what we're all going to have to do. So it's a very dynamic situation, and the interplay between the Act and the CARES Act, which is something other speakers today are going to be talking about, is of great interest to employers today who are also applying for these loan/grant opportunities. So with that, though, given our limited time, I think I should probably stop there and move on.
Okay. So the next question is, how do leaves intersect and coordinate between FMLA and the emergency sick paid leave? Robin, you want to give an answer to that one?
Well, yes, I do, but I normally I'm sort of famous for, or I'm not famous, but normally I'm very practical, and I never start out, it depends, because, right, for me or from anybody else. But the truth is that this is evolving in real time right now. And up to now, we've been actually date stamping our advice because it became, obsolete or needed to be revised every 2 or 3 days since the Act went into effect. And even, by the way, the date of the Act going into effect was a bit of a surprise, because when it was enacted by Congress, it said it would be in effect no later than 15 days from the date of enactment. So all the lawyers across the country took that to mean April 2nd. Then the DOL came out and said, no, April 1st. So, everything about it's been a little bit unusual, shall we say. So the intersection is unclear at this point, and we expect new guidance to roll out, but we also expect some additional congressional pushback, because instead of rewriting its guidance as Congress demanded, the DOL just added to the existing guidance. And this sets up an issue because statutory construction, that world, when the dust settles, what we're all going to be required to do is follow this statute, and an agency is not permitted to change the statute or override it. So I'm sure that we should be relying on this guidance to the degree that it deviates from the language of the statute, which it does in several respects.
Okay, thank you. How do the tax credits for reimbursing qualified sick and COVID-19 related family leaves work? Suzanne, you want to attack that one for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a try. I guess I'm gonna ask if I can just sort of like hop on Robin's coattails with respect to like the disclaimer that she's sort of giving applies across the board, right? I'm not gonna drag everybody through explaining. I just would amplify her point that all of this is it's just all evolving like literally by the hour. But what we know is that, as I said, in order to help employers cover the cost of providing these new paid leave entitlements, that there have been created two new tax credits, a paid sick leave credit and a paid childcare leave credit. Now, to take immediate advantage of the paid leave credits, employers are going to be able to actually retain and access funds that they would normally otherwise pay to the IRS in payroll taxes. And if those amounts aren't sufficient to cover the amount of the paid leave that the employer paid, they're going to be able to seek an expedited advance from IRS with a new form that I think I think it's form 7200, Robin?
I think that's right.
Okay. So let's think about how this will work for just a second. When you pay your employees, right, you're entitled to withhold from their pay federal income taxes as well as the employee's share of Medicare and Social Security, and then deposit those amounts together with your portion of Social Security and Medicare, and deposit all of that with Form 941 to the IRS. So with these tax credits, though, if you pay qualifying emergency sick or emergency FMLA wages, you'll be able to retain an amount of those payroll taxes equal to the amount of your qualifying EFMLA and emergency paid sick leave wages that you paid out. The payroll taxes that are available for retention include federal withheld income taxes, the employee share of Social Security and Medicare, and the employer share of Social Security and Medicare with respect to all of your employees. Let's see. Okay, in addition to a tax credit for the amount of the paid wages, we also know that employers are entitled to a tax credit to cover qualified health plan expenses. So to cover the cost of health plan coverage that's extended during periods of leave.
Great. And can employees use emergency sick or COVID-19 related personal leave intermittently?
That's a great question. It seems that this is one of the areas that DOL and Congress are sort of in disagreement about. DOL has said that whether an employee can use this leave intermittently depends on the reason for the leave and also whether the employee is teleworking or whether the employee is working from the employer's regular work site. So as for the emergency FMLA leave, DOL guidance says that an employee can only use it intermittently while they're working remotely regardless of whether they're teleworking or working at the work site, the employee can only use the EFMLA leave intermittently if the employer allows it. And as for EPSL leave, the guidance says that an employee can use it intermittently while they're remote if the employer allows it, but they may not use it intermittently if they are working at their regular work site. Now, all of that is a little bit up in the air because the letter that Robin mentioned that Congress wrote to the DOL basically told DOL that they got that all entirely wrong, and that Congress's intent was for employees to be able to use both of these entitlements, paid sick and paid family, honestly, Robin, jump in if I get it wrong, but my reading of the letter from Congress was that they're saying their intent was for employees to use these entitlements really however they see fit, whether that's intermittently or not, and whether they're teleworking or not.
I think that's exactly right. And there's, more to learn about that, when additional guidance, comes out. But you're exactly right about that. That does appear to be the congressional intent. And I think that the concept behind that was that it would be funded through these, capital infusion programs like CARES, which other speakers will be talking about today. But the mechanisms for all of those entitlements are really yet to be understood completely. Actually, I think we understood the guidance. We didn't like it necessarily, but we understood. But Congress has just given, the regulatory agency a direct instruction to rewrite the guidance.
So, Robin, how does FFCRA leaves interact with state and private sick and disability leaves?
Well, in the words of one of my partners who's really on the front lines of this, it's a hot mess. That's the technical term that we're using presently. But the view from 30,000 feet is that these entitlements are intended to be, by Congress at least, intended to be in addition to rights that workers already had. So there will be some situations that seem very inequitable to employers where people have, let's say, used a significant portion of Family and Medical Leave Act leave, and perhaps in certain states that have separate bonding leaves for, post-pregnancy and that sort of thing. And then they'll have these additional new rights that started on April 1st for paid sick leave and paid extended FMLA leave. So that's another area where we're going to have to wait for additional guidance. I don't think the ultimate result is going to be that people can double up and take advantage of all the leave that they have simultaneously at one time. And the new leave rights that have been authorized by the FFCRA, which I'm hoping we can come up with something else for, because that's so hard to say. The only good thing I can say about that act from a management law and point of view is that it has a shelf life. It only lasts until the end of the year. The provisions in it terminate on December 31st. So unless it's extended by Congress, it's a short-term, though unruly set of new entitlements.
Okay, thank you.
Sam, I know that's a kind of a unsophisticated way to talk about it, but if I said anything that was inaccurate, please let me know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, the question of how it interacts with other entitlements, I just think is like just impossibly muddy at this point.
One of the criticisms by Congress of the current guidance is that the poster that is supposed to be posted on April 1st may not apply to any of the employees of the organization that is required to post it, without any regard to what that does to morale or the credibility of leadership, let alone the actual administration of any applications for rights under it. So that's a big problem. And then you have things as interesting as, how do you post it if you're shut down? How do you do that? Now, that's a little easier to come to grips with, because if you can't get into your building, you still have a website and you have email and so forth, so you can actually electronically post it. But the utility of posting something and then saying to your workforce, April Fools, it doesn't apply to any of us, that's problematic. So that's one of the major criticisms. I wouldn't even say that's a major criticism. I think that's just an emblematic criticism. One of the things that we think will probably be revised. Aviva, I'm seeing a telephone symbol in the middle. Everyone else seeing that as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't just me. I didn't touch anything.
Thank you.
So I don't want to take up too much time on that one question, but there's more to learn.
Okay. Scott, are you there and capable? Do we have you connected that you want us to go to you next? Scott Kaplowitz?
I can answer any questions as well on behalf of Scott while he's getting in.
Okay, so the first question we had in this arena was, thank you, Emily. What is the Paycheck Protection Program loan that companies can apply for?
So the Paycheck Protection Loan is a loan, sorry, excuse me, let me just pull up my notes, but it's available to small businesses, folks with less than 500 or less in US employees. Household employers are excluded, but you know, it's part of $350 billion stimulus package. Applications were expected to begin being accepted today. There's been a little bit of hold up with the banks. You know, anyone who is interested in applying, we're recommending get in touch with your bank. It is a process that is done through a lender. But basically it's based on historical payroll, and the incentive is to maintain that with those payroll costs ongoing through this period. And it, you know, covers a good portion of payroll during an 8-week period following the loan date.
And who qualifies for it? You were started to say some
Yep,
yes, some yes.
So employers with 500 or less US employees.
Self-employed?
Yep, self-employed counts as well.
Okay. How much of a loan are you able to apply for, excuse me?
Apply for. So it's a lesser of $10 million, or it's a product of your payroll costs, historical payroll costs over a 12-month period, the average monthly payroll cost multiplied by 2.5.
Okay, and what portion is forgivable by the government, if any?
So the portion that's forgivable by the government is based on what you're able to spend during the 8-week period after the loan is granted on expenses, mainly on payroll. So it's going to be 75% of it has to be based on payroll. Other expenses that can be covered to the extent of 25% of the loan are rent, utilities, and or mortgage interest.
Okay, and what is the process to apply for this government incentive, and how laborious is it?
So it's actually a really straightforward application. They did this on purpose in order to have the money be available for small businesses in a very quick way. But they do need to be applied for through an SBA approved bank, which is most banks. So as you can imagine, many banks are kind of overwhelmed with the requests at this point. So if this is something that you are interested in doing, I recommend, you know, getting in touch with your bank today.
Okay, and then when do we think that the companies can expect who've applied will actually start to receive some of this aid?
So we can't guarantee when the funds will be received, but our sense is that the money, once granted, will you know, come through very quickly. You know, the idea is that people are in need right now, and that's the government's intent, is to get that out to companies who need it and keep people on payroll. So to just not have any interference with, you know, employment and avoid layoffs.
And what other information should we know about it sort of off the top of your head, or if Scott, if you're available by voice, then you can pipe in as well.
I think, you know, these are really favorable repayment terms, whether or not the loan is forgiven or not. It likely will be if you have the expenses related to it. But if you're an employer who's in a tough spot, and, you know, I recommend applying for the loan. It's a 2-year maturity with a 1% interest rate and a 6-month payment deferral. So, we recommend applying if you have historical payroll or if you're self-employed, apply for the loan. And, it's just a great opportunity, and we're recommending it to all of our small businesses.
Great, thank you.
My
Going to
pleasure.
switch gears for a minute over to the retirement plan questions that come under the same craziness. Scott Tuxbury, what action steps do plan sponsors have to take to implement the CARES Act participant distribution requests?
Thanks, Aviva. Again, the caveat, this is going out as of April 3rd. But so far what we've heard from many record keepers that plan sponsors will have to approve and adopt within their plan document the CARES Act provision. Now, many record keepers have adopted an opt-out feature, meaning they're automatically going to be adding this provision to your plan document without any action steps needed to be taken by you. Though we do have one provider, Principal Financial, that has added an opt-in feature, meaning they would like to hear from those clients saying, hey, we would like to add this provision to our plan document. The provision or the deadline to do so, plan sponsors have until the last day of their plan year, which is why I caveated 4/3, because plan years normally coincide with calendar year. But for our nonprofit clients, sometimes that will coincide, your plan year will coincide with your business year, 6/30 or 9/30. And that is found on the very first page of your adoption agreement. And that's where your plan year will be listed. And so you won't have to go too far to figure that out. But we want to make sure that you check there to make sure that, again, you can adopt the provisions accordingly.
So how does the CARES Act impact retirement plan participants?
Well, that's been a large question that's has a lot of ramifications regarding really specifically participant withdrawals. So participant withdrawals out of retirement plans in the past had been done in a few different ways. So one, let's just talk a general withdrawal from a retirement program, qualified asset, i.e. IRA, retirement plan, 401k, 403b, simple SEP, etc. So those assets, the CARES Act allows an individual to take up to $100,000 during the calendar year of 2020, and it may include distributions made prior to the passing of the CARES Act. So if someone says individually, I would like to take money out of my qualified retirement account up to $100,000, and you are under 59 and a half, they have waived the 10% penalty for doing so. So that's one. Two, normally a record keeper would be required to withhold a portion of your taxes. That has also been waived. So the CARES Act allows the participant to waive the normally mandatory 20% federal tax withholding from the coronavirus-related withdrawal. But it doesn't mean this is tax-free. It means that the participant is now required to pay the taxes on the distribution and over a period of time. So although no federal taxes will be withheld from the distribution, certain states still may require tax withholding. So the repayment of the distribution for the CARES Act, you may choose to repay that coronavirus-related withdrawal over a period of 3 years. So although you don't owe the tax, you owe a third of your taxes for your 2020 calendar year tax return. If you do pay the money back over a period of 3 years or within the 3-year limit, you will then be able to amend your tax return to recoup the taxes you have paid, because in effect you've paid back your individual distribution out of your retirement program. So I'll give you a real life example. I'm an employee. I take $100,000 out of my IRA. I'm under 59 and a half. I'm not required to pay the 10% penalty. My record keeper is not required to withhold my 20% federal, although I might still owe state taxes. It goes state by state. And let's say it takes me 2 years to pay that money back. I will owe a third of my taxes for 2020. But in the year 2021, I'm able to write a check and pay back the $100,000 I took out in 2020. That means I could amend my personal tax return for 2020 to recoup the taxes I repaid to make sure that this withdrawal is in effect, a tax-free distribution. The repayments back into your qualified account does not count towards your contribution limits. So i.e. 19,500 for this year or 26,000 including catch-up, and also your 57,000 total annual contribution amounts. So that means that, again, any repayments does not count towards those limits. And the CARES Act distribution can be funded from a participant's entire vested balance under the plan. So those are the withdrawals for individuals looking to take money out of, again, your retirement account, i.e. IRA, SEP IRA, simple 401k, 403b. But also the provision of the CARES Act allows for additional distributions in the form of a traditional loan. So a employee may make a qualified retirement plan request under the special loan provision for COVID-19. So similarly to the individual qualified account, the loan amount, which normally was 50% of your vested account balance not to exceed $50,000, the CARES Act provides that the loans that are being taken out during a 180-day period, this is important, beginning March 27, 2020 to September 23rd, 2022, the maximum loan amount increases from $50,000 to $100,000 or 100% of the vested account balance. So participants now can request a larger loan amount than normally was allowed per the IRS. Also, the participant may defer their loan payments. So the CARES Act allows for participants to defer scheduled repayments due on outstanding loans on or after the date of enactment for an additional year. So if the participant does delay their repayment of the loan, hey, I've taken money out, I'm using it to live off of, I've deferred my payment, the loan will be re-amortized with interest accruing during that deferral payment period. So really, again, your individual loan provisions, there's loan provisions within your retirement program that you then, in effect, will be repaying yourself back with interest. And the last provision regarding withdrawals or distributions really is around people that are past, required minimum distribution age. So RMDs that were due on April 1st, 2020, participants will, with a required beginning date of April 1st, will not be required to take their RMD. Participants with an RMD due on December 31st will not be required to take their RMD. And you also may implement individually a special rollover rule, meaning if a participant chooses, they may choose to roll over their 2020 RMD to an IRA or another eligible retirement plan. And normally RMD payments are not eligible for rollover. So again, you could, if you wanted to, take money out as you normally would required for an RMD, but then again, roll those back into another qualified account, i.e., your IRA or Roth IRA. So Roth conversion of your rollover RMD could be a great strategy to convert taxable savings into future tax-free distributions. And that's something our team and our wealth counselors can help answer that question if that is the right strategy for you. So
Thanks,
those
Scott.
are the distribution rules.
So Scott, what strategies for success can organizations implement to help manage questions from their employees about all that stuff you just went through?
So I think really although you don't have to, we want to make sure that you do adopt your plan document correctly and to ensure that the provision is enacted if in the case pops up that an employee does want to take distributions. The other strategies for success really is around educate, educate, educate. Hypercommunication during this time period, as we found, has been a great source of comfort for our clients and participants. There's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of someone that's speaking with people on a half-hour basis every day, all day. There's a lot of nervousness, a lot of fears. But I am really proud of the fact that even through education processes, people have been really, really uplifting during this difficult time. And so although they're worried about how this downturn is affecting their overall long-term goals, we find many that once spoken to are able to take a big deep breath and say, okay, we're in this together. I know this too shall pass. So again, virtual webinars, one-on-one counseling, and letting us know what other topics you'd like us to provide for education, we think would be a great strategy for success. Again, hypercommunication during this time, we think is the main course of action that we'd like to help all of you deploy during this period of health crisis.
What ideas can we utilize or can we utilize to enable the plan sponsors to fulfill their fiduciary responsibilities and embrace best practices under this new environment?
Well, as someone that helps clients through many different administrative challenges, we know fiduciary responsibility will still be beholden on the plan sponsor, i.e. the administrator, for ensuring people that are deferring their loan repayments for a year, that the re-amortization of those loans is done correctly. If I had to take a heat map of times when a plan administration, would not be done correctly, the re-amortization of loans in particular is an area that is commonly, with the record keeper as the plan sponsor is not done correctly. So again, making sure you're hyper-focused on the administration of the re-amortization of those loans would be something we want to make sure you take particular close attention to. Employee plan investments. Obviously during times of turmoil, changing out investments, adding and deleting investments, looking at overall plan performance is another area that we want to make sure that people pay close attention to. Our own organization had a retirement plan in blackout as this began. And our strategy for success there was to work with the record keeper to make sure the blackout period ended as soon as possible. We were able to achieve success by beating that deadline by 10 full business days, which we thought was fantastic. So again, making sure we're aware of potential investment changes and how that could affect employees' ability to move money in and out of the market, given their own risk tolerance. Also employee compensation. If you're devising and creating ways to compensate your employees, you want to make sure that your definition of compensation within your plan document, it does include maybe the new formats of how you're providing partial payments or partial compensation to your employees, either count or do not count for salary deferral. So determining if it is included in the definition of comp, but also making sure that it is excluded in the definition of compensation within your plan document would also be a best practice. And then also employer contributions. So if you have a discretionary matching contribution or discretionary profit sharing contribution or non-elective, you may elect to stop it. But as a courtesy to employees, the employer may consider providing prior notice. So again, we've had some clients reach out to us and say, hey, what are my options? Can I stop this matching contribution? Can I stop this profit sharing or not? And we're providing that guidance to them. But again, politically and culturally, if you are going to take that step, we would recommend that you let people know or allow us to help educate people of what that is. If you have a stated matching contribution or profit sharing or non-elective contribution within your document, then it will be required to provide some summary of material modification to employees. And they also should consider prior notice to participants as well. So you'll see that on an annual basis, i.e. your summary plan description or your SMM. We want to make sure that your SMM is updated to ensure that, again, if your profit sharing or your matching contribution is something that is stated in the document, that is changed prior to you actually go ahead and making that investment decision to stop the match. And then plan utilizing safe harbor designations also need to satisfy some annual non-discrimination tests as well. So the IRS has clarified that an employer may stop making safe harbor contributions, either matching or non-elective, if they amend their plan document, but only if the employer is operating at an economic loss as defined in the code under Section 4112C2A-B. So additional safe harbor notices provided prior to plan year end, included in the statement, would also need to be QC'd to make sure that that information is in there. And it's something, again, your team here at Sapers Wallack can help you figure out before you go ahead and make that step to stopping or not including safe harbor contributions, either through match or non-elective ongoing. So please reach out to us. We can help make sure that you mitigate that decision well in accordance with your plan document. And then last but not least, is really the target date fund oversight. There has been guidance per the DOL and IRS. Target date investments have been a really popular choice within retirement programs. You want to make sure that you have the documentation and memo on file that ensures that you've taken a look at your target dates to make sure that the risk tolerance that they have placed upon your employees is correct. There will be documentation that we would consider that you should have within your file to make sure, again, those target dates are appropriate. We have now seen through a major stress test what a target date 2015-2020 mutual fund has provided for returns for employees, and ensuring that those, again, do coincide with your overall risk tolerance, and people that know what that is a prudent step forward. And that is, again, something that we can help you manage and administer for your, again, overall fiduciary oversight.
Thanks, Scott. So that's the end of the prepared questions that people sent in ahead of time, which will now give us a chance to actually answer the questions that you all have submitted while the presenters were presenting. I'll do my best to direct them to the right person, but any of the panelists feel free to chime in if you think I sent it the wrong place. And one of the first ones we received was, so employer is not required to pay first 10 days of emergency FMLA, but is required to pay first 10 days of emergency sick leave? Suzanne, Robin, one of you want to attack that?
First 10 days, first 10 days of the emergency FMLA leave is unpaid. That's right. If an employee has a qualifying reason that is a qualifying reason for sick pay and also FMLA leave, sure, I think they could conceivably use that 80-hour entitlement to emergency paid sick leave during those 10 days of unpaid FMLA leave.
Okay. And is FMLA 12 weeks, as in 480 hours total, even for part-time employees?
Oh, good question. Yeah,
there's a guidance on that in the question and answers posted by the DOL, which I don't think it's changed in the new set that came out this morning. And that question is there's a question and answer number 5 that addresses how that works. And there's a formula, but it's basically an average of a 2-week interval, a pay period. So, which sort of makes sense, that part-time people wouldn't be treated the same as full-time for purposes of calculating the leave. And I know I sound like a broken record. That could change a little bit because I do think that that's one of the areas that's being criticized by Congress. But there is a logic to the notion that there would be a formula that would correlate to the number of hours over a period of time. I think they're trying to somewhat simulate how it works with other types of leave. And on that point, I tried to quickly go through the Q&A that were added today, and I noticed that new number 76 and 77 address the issue that, Aviva, you asked me about earlier, which was how do state leaves interact with these new leaves. So we don't have time to go through them on an itemized basis, but numbers 76 and 77 address that.
Okay. And what are the guidelines around an employee who has resigned but has not run out and would otherwise be covered by emergency FMLA, who has not run out of their 2 weeks notice? So who's resigned but has not run out of their 2 weeks notice but would otherwise be covered under emergency FMLA?
It seems to me that to the extent that they have a qualifying reason for leave, they are eligible for the leave as any other employee would be until the end of whatever their notice period is, right? Until they've effectively separated from service.
Right, it's not a job protection. It doesn't extend their job past their resignation date, but it does entitle them to the same rights as other employees while they're still employed. I agree with you.
Okay. If you have staff take the EPSL FMLA and have the opportunity to get a payroll tax credit, can you also get a loan with the Payroll Protection Act and get it forgiven? Sounds like double dipping.
Yes, that's double dip. You can't do that.
Can you explain a little bit, Emily, of what you can do or can't do, or how they decide which is which?
Yep. So, our recommendation is to apply for the PPP loan. That's going to give you the biggest stimulus package. But if you can't get that, there are also credits available that we would definitely recommend as a follow-up. You can, in all the analysis that we've done, it's been the PPP loan has been more of a benefit. That said, the PPP loan is a pool of money that will be exhausted, at some point. So if you don't have access to the PPP loan, the credits are there for that reason too. And, you'd want to just prioritize what makes the most sense for your individual business.
So the follow-on to that question about running out of money.
Yeah.
So there's feelings that they may run out of money, but there's also rumors that they'll come up with more. Is that only if Trump wants to get reelected, or is there, have you read anything that says that they will come up with more funds if needed?
So, I have heard discussion of, additional stimulus packages after this one, because it probably won't cover everyone. That said, it is a huge pool of money, and it really depends on the application rate by small businesses. We have heard that while it is first come, first serve, there may be priority given to minority held businesses and women-owned businesses. So that's something to know as well. But there's no guarantee that there'll be additional stimulus packages released, but I have heard that it's considered.
Okay. So for the PPP loan, do we also include any 1099 independent contractors who work for us? And how do you determine who is considered an independent contractor working for you?
Right. So it was expected that some of the 1099 independent contractors could be included when calculating the maximum amount of the loan. There were new regulations released within the last 12 hours that clarified that because 1099 independent contractors can apply for their own loans using those same figures, it would be considered, a double dip again. So they would not be included. So you are limited to payroll unless you're self-employed, and then you're working with net earnings from self-employment.
Okay. And with a number of schools and daycares closed around the country, how do we manage EFMLA requests, or how do you determine when someone can't work remotely? I would say that's for Suzanne or Robin.
Yeah, I'll start, and then
Go ahead.
Yeah, Robin can fill in the blanks, because I want to beat Robin to the punch to say, like, this is up in the air. Robin keeps getting to say it's up in the air. I want to say it's up in the air. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. The DOL, I think, did endeavor to address the question of what it means to be unable to work or telework in their Q&A guidance. And that was things like, from the employer's perspective, okay, your employee is going to have to document their need for the leave. And one of the statements that DOL is saying, the employee should be able to make is that there's no one else to care for the child. There's also language in the DOL Q&A guidance about the fact that unless the fact that your child's school is closed prevents you from working remotely, working from home, then you're not eligible for the leave. And so we thought we sort of knew the answer to that question. What does it mean to be able or not able to work or telework? But in the letter that Congress wrote to the DOL, this was another area where I think Congress more or less told DOL they got it completely wrong.
Okay.
Well,
Rob?
Suzanne's exactly right about that. And as litigators, we're concerned about the interface of that inquiry and privacy rights and the potential for claims of discrimination down the road while employers are navigating this and trying to ask appropriate questions without getting too far into the weeds regarding their employees' domestic arrangements. It's very murky territory. But I think there's got to be new guidance in the next couple of days, because these are not remote issues. These are issues confronting every employer in the United States that has less than 500 employees. So I do think that there will be more information coming out soon.
So another question that came up, and I'm not sure who should answer this, but I'm thinking Emily. But when the SBA PPP loan situation, they're suggesting it can cover payroll and benefits. Is it just health and dental, or can it include disability and life and even retirement? How do they determine what those benefits are?
So our understanding is health and retirement. So that would be the medical, vision, and retirement benefits that the employer pays for the employee. As everyone on the panel has said, they're still releasing guidance, but currently that's our understanding.
Okay. And and this is probably back to Suzanne and Robin, when using a rolling look back method for FMLA leave, if an employee took FMLA on March 1st to April 30th of last year, as of today, would they be able to use 4 weeks EFMLA?
So DOL's position in the guidance, as I understand it, is that the Emergency FMLA Act doesn't it creates a new reason. It creates a new qualified reason for leave, but it doesn't create a brand new entitlement. So if an employee had exhausted their existing FMLA entitlement based either on a rolling 12 months or a calendar, whatever method the employer uses to determine, that this act doesn't give them a new entitlement to a new 12 weeks. It just gives them the right to take FMLA leave for a new reason. Robin,
I cannot improve on that answer. That was perfectly stated.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the audience for these brilliant panelists here who caveat everything on it depends, or it may change? All right, well then, we'll be wrapping up, but just so you know, we are recording this, so we will have this to share with you. In addition, we're going to create, if there are other questions that come up, we can create some FAQs to send out. And if something comes up after the fact, please just send us an email or pick up the phone and call us. And then we can do our best to get the answers. If it's not something we can answer, from one of the people who are on the panel with us. I see one more that snuck in here. This may or may not apply here, but I'll ask it anyhow. As part of an employer with over 500 employees, since the FFCRA was signed, why employers over 500 are not required to participate? Do we have any idea why the act was written this way? Is there anything in the pipeline or being developed that would affect the larger over 500 employers?
So there are a few exceptions to the 500 employee requirement, or to be at least 500 employees, but it's for specific targeted industries, such as in the hospitality area right now. We do expect in the healthcare area for there to be additional stimulus, likely, just given the impact. So as of right now, there isn't anything available. The idea is to get small businesses who are huge employers of the middle. They're just trying to keep people employed at this time in that area. I'm sure there will be more stimulus that will impact those folks that are over as well.
Thank you. So I want to thank our wonderful panelists that we have today, Robin, Suzanne, Scott, and Emily. and the other Scott remotely. I'm sure you're sending good vibes there. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules, because I know we're all going a million miles an hour these days and doing that. I also want to thank all of our clients and friends who are participating for dialing in and being part of it. We are all in this together. We will get through it. Our Sapers Wallack and Hill Group of New England team, along with our network of specialists, are here for you. We can direct you to other specialists if we can't answer your questions, and try and deal with any obstacle that might get in your way. We hope it was helpful to you, and don't hesitate to reach out. If other things come up that we feel we need to do a repeat, we will try and pull the team together again and do something else and update you accordingly. This is an iterative process. I just say hang in there, stay safe, stay home, or do the things that you need to do. But we are here for you, and we look forward to continuing our relationship.